Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Penny Lehman. I am one of the co-chairs for Stanford Cradle to Career, the 0 to 5 Early Childhood Community Action Network, which we call a CAN. Some of you may know me as the Director of Program Services for Children's Learning Centers of Fairfield County, or CLC. Welcome. We are so glad that you're here to join us tonight. You are, on behalf of Stanford Cradle to Career's 0 to 5 Early Childhood CAN, who organized tonight's training. I'd like to welcome you to our fall Early Childhood Professional Development Series. This is our emotional connection session this evening. Emily, I'll let you translate.
Okay. Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Me llamo Penny Lehman. Muchos de ustedes me pueden conocer a mí como codirectora de la redacción 0 a 5 o otras personas me pueden conocer como directora de programas en el condado de Fairfield. Bienvenido. Les damos muchas gracias por estar aquí. En nombre del programa de Stanford, nos gustaría darle la bienvenida y presentarles a ustedes la sesión de conexión emocional de la doctora Welch.
Okay, I'd like to introduce Emily Almendarez. She will be our Spanish translator this evening. If you would like to listen to tonight's session in Spanish, I'm going to ask you to please select the Spanish language channel. And the directions are, okay, we're doing a simultaneous interpretation into Spanish this evening using the Zoom interpretation feature. At the bottom of your screen, you will see a little globe icon. Click on that. And then you're going to click, you can select which language you'd like to hear, English or Spanish. If you would like to hear the event in English, click English. If you want to hear it in Spanish, click Spanish. And then we're going to ask you to click on mute original audio. And then that should set you up for your translation. I'm going to enable the Spanish language translation now.
So, me gustaría presentarles a Emily Almendarez. Ella va a estar haciendo la interpretación esta noche. Si desea escuchar la sesión en español, le pido que presione el glóbulo abajo de su pantalla. Gloria Finn states that she can't see the globe.
Yo también no lo ve.
Okay. Is there some, you're still seeing it up, correct, Penny?
Okay, hold on. Does she see it now?
No.
Oh, Marcia sees it. Okay, I now cannot hear Emily, so I'm hoping that you see it now. Gloria still can't see it. Gloria, can you see it? See?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We can see the globe now.
Oh, good, good,
and,
good.
I'm
Okay.
just wondering if the Spanish is going to sound and,
I'm not able to hear anything.
Thank
Emily,
you.
Emily's on the
I can't hear
channel.
anything.
Go on ahead and
I wonder.
click
Beatrice, can you hear English? Beatrice? Beatrice.
I think she selected Spanish, so now she can only hear Emily speaking.
She said she couldn't hear anything.
It's going to need to click mute original audio. Okay, just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Please remember to keep yourself muted when you're not speaking. And what we're going to do for questions is, if you want to enter a question in the chat, we will answer questions after the presentation, or you can ask after the presentation.
Thank you. I didn't have it on.
So a reminder, at the end of tonight's session, we will raffle off 2 copies of the book, Each and Every Child, Teaching Preschool with an Equity Lens by Susan Friedman and Alyssa Wenlupi. And I will post in the chat a copy of the presentation in Spanish for those who are on the Spanish language that need to follow along. It's now my pleasure to introduce our presenter this evening. Tonight, I'm honored to introduce Dr. Martha Welch. She's a director of the Nurture Science Program at Columbia University Medical Center. Dr. Welch is a pioneer in the treatment of childhood emotional, behavioral, and developmental disorders for more than 40 years. She's a professor of psychiatry in pediatric and pathology and cell biology at Columbia University Medical Center. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Martha Welch. Dr. Welch, take it away.
Thank you, Penny. This is my second time talking to Cradle to Careers, and I'm happy to see some faces I know, and I look forward to questions from people I haven't yet met. Tonight, I'm going to talk about emotional connection and the new lens provided by the WECS, the Welch Emotional Connection Screen, and the supports. We have tools for getting people connected. And I'll tell you about some studies we've done. I would like to ask you not to reproduce any of the slides, particularly that have patients on them. But I'm very glad to have you look at this presentation. Apparently you'll be able to look at it again. Next slide. So I'd like to orient you to the orienting reflex because I think it best makes understandable how I arrived at the Welch Emotional Connection Screen, which is a very brief screen. It takes 1 to 3 minutes for a parent-facing professional to figure out if a mother and child are indeed connected. And it's based on something that's a survival mechanism, which I'm sure all of you have seen in animals, especially around Connecticut. We have so many deer who are used to us and don't get very alarmed when they see us. But if they hear a crackle, ooh, their ears perk up, their eyes get wide, and that's the orienting reflex. Now, in humans, what is a similar situation? For a baby, the mother-child relationship is the environment. And the baby needs to perk up like the deer to the mother. And we're seeing a lot of kids who don't do that now. It's coming to epidemic proportions. Now, it turns out that babies orient to very high valence communication, and that means high positive or high negative. And neutral, I'm sure we all know, when you just blather on, nobody pays attention. But if you say something with strong emotion, it catches attention. And we take advantage of this to get children into the orienting reflex with their mothers when they don't do it. Now, this is all based on the autonomic nervous system. And you say, what's that? Well, we have two nervous systems. We have the nervous system of the brain and the central nervous system in general. And we have the nervous system of our organs, of our hearts, our guts, all our organs. Now, it turns out that this nervous system is really the king because the information flow up the main nerve connecting the organs to the brain is 80% up and only 20% from brain down to the organs. And this is the nervous system of heart-to-heart communication and gut feelings. And this is the nervous system that connects a baby in utero and at birth and thereafter. Next slide, please. Now, it's this orienting reflex that sets the conditions for relating. And we call the next reflex the autonomic social emotional reflex. And why do we call autonomic social emotional? Because it's the autonomic nervous system that's causing two people to approach or avoid each other. And you know perfectly well what I'm talking about in terms of gut feelings. You have a gut feeling to avoid somebody, or even if it's a stranger, you have a gut feeling to use their help and it will be okay. And generally, you read things correctly. And when you follow your gut feelings, you say, boy, am I lucky I followed my gut feeling, that worked out so well. Or boy, was I lucky I didn't do that. My gut told me not to. Or, oh, I knew not to do that. My gut told me not to. I wish I hadn't. That's what I'm talking about, that reflex. So this reflex begins in utero with the co-calming or co-excitement that happens between mother and baby during gestation. And at birth, if birth goes well, you get co-calming quite automatically. And it's in turn the basis for proximity sleep. Somebody has a radio on. So it's also the basis for co-calming or co-regulating with teachers, which applies very much to this group because 40 to 60% of 5-year-olds are not ready for kindergarten, both in this country and in Canada. Oh, speaking of Canada, I forgot to introduce Andriane Lavallee, who helped me put this presentation together. And she's our postdoctoral fellow from Canada. So if you think Canada's in big letters, it's because of Andriane and because Canada's having the same trouble we're having. Next slide, please. Now, the very most important thing to know about emotional connection, besides that you need to orient first and you have to have a positive autonomic social emotional reflex towards each other, emotional connection is a state. It's an autonomic state. It's not a trait of one or the other person. And that gives us great hope for fixing problems between mothers and children, because it's a state between two people. And states change according to the circumstances of the environment. And the good news is it means it's changeable. And we have a theory of change, which is emotional exchange. The mother speaks very emotionally to the child, and I'll tell you more about that. Next slide, please. Now, how did I come up with this idea? Well, I saw so many children and mothers who couldn't get together. And then after the intervention, there was a complete change. So children went from physical avoidance to attraction, from withdrawal to being very sociable, from speech delays to normal or even extraordinary speech once they got connected, from oppositional behavior, which you see pictured here, to optimal give and take. And the developmental delays melted away. And very interestingly, children not connected very often expressed a smell aversion to their mothers. Even saying, oh, you stink, or I can't stand your breath. And then when they connect, it just changes like that. Next slide, please. And this little boy, you see, avoiding his mother. This is what he did for 4 years. You see, he's clutching a pillow on the floor. He spent the whole session clinging to that pillow until his mother finally insisted on picking him up and holding him through his upset until you see this beautiful picture. 9 times he said with great surprise and awe, "You're not stinky," because they got connected after about 19 minutes of trying. 19 minutes. That sounds like a long time to have your child avoid you. But think of it, 19 minutes to change a mother-child relationship that's already 4 years down the drain. 19 minutes is all it took. Next slide, please. So out of this understanding from these changes I saw, I came up with the 4 vital signs of relational health. Just like 4 vital signs of physical health: temperature, blood pressure, heart rate, respiratory rate. There are 4 signs of relational health. And the first one is mutual attraction. Are they drawn to each other? Do they seek cozy proximity? Is there mutual vocal communication inviting connection? Or is there sarcasm or rejection in the vocal exchange? Is there mutual facial communication? Is it warm? And is there sustained gaze? We see so many children who will do a very brief glance at their mother, checking all the time, but not really gazing at the mother, even if it's a very available mother. Available doesn't count if they don't get together. And the 4th sign is reciprocity. Is there equal give and take? Next slide, please. Now, as I said, this is a very brief screen. It takes 1 to 3 minutes. I'm going to prove it to you that you can do it yourselves. And then, of course, what do you think? Everybody wants to know. Okay, now we're seeing a lot of children and mothers not connected. The child won't look at the mother, the child.
Dr. Welch froze.
Am I still frozen?
No, you're unfrozen now.
Oh, good. It says my internet is unstable. Now that's a dandy thing. Okay. Okay, should I start back? Did you hear me say that it only takes 1 to 3 minutes and I'm going to prove it to you? Okay.
Yes.
But everybody then wants to know, what do we do about it? And we do have a toolkit. The first one is a prompt card for emotional exchange. It has several prompts for the mother to start an expression to the child. The first one might be, tell your child how you named him or her. And that's usually a very emotion-related discussion. The mother feels free to express her emotions about it. And the child really orients to her when she starts to get emotional. Or tell your child a time when you were very scared for them. That brings up the feeling the mother had of fear, and then the child will orient to that and they can start to relate. Then reading together, we wrote a parent-child poem book called Cuddle and Calm with tips for connecting. And we did a brief pilot study, and there was a significant change in the way parents handled temper tantrums, which is a miraculous finding from just reading a little poetry book. Parents generally don't know how to handle tantrums, and they've been given very bad advice from most pediatricians and others to put your child in timeout, to be firm with them. And we've shown, actually in a study, that any kind of discipline, even what we consider very good discipline, is inversely proportional to emotional connection. And it just turns out that getting emotionally connected is a much better strategy than any kind of discipline. That doesn't mean don't have limits, but the answer to a violation of limits is to get connected. And then we have a book for mothers and infants. Next slide, please. So we've tested this. First, we started at the very beginning with preterm babies. And my best friend, colleague from medical school told me, Martha, you will never show a change in brain or physiology with your intervention in the NICU with preterm babies. Oh, I said, oh, do you want to help me with the study? Oh, sure, he said. Well, this is the result. And he had to recant his prediction. By term age, the babies had higher autonomic regulation, increased brain activity, which is a very big deal. And then by 4 months, they had lower heart rate under stressful conditions and better face-to-face interaction. The mothers were less depressed and anxious at that time, which is the time that predicts the whole first year. By 18 months, they had better language, better cognition, better attention, which was a real deficit for so many preterm babies and so many not preterm babies, and decreased risk for autism. There's a very big extra chance of autism in preterm babies, and it's nationally 1 out of 4, and we changed it to 1 out of 9 with a brief intervention. And very remarkably, out to 4 and 5 years, better physiologic regulation in both mother and child, which is another miracle because mothers of preterm babies are at extra risk for cardiovascular disease. So we may be buffering them against that. And there are very few interventions that have long-term results for both mother and child, and certainly not in more stable physiology. Next, please. Then we move to the preschool group, and these are our wonderful results at CLC. We did a randomized controlled trial, which means we compare regular programming with regular programming plus the mother-child intervention. And you can see from this graph, the percent of mothers that were connected after 6 months. This is 6 months later from the start of the intervention, which was 8 sessions, up to 8 sessions, 2 to 8 sessions. So not very much intervention with quite a big result. Next. That was emotional connection. It decreased problem behavior on the preschool pediatric symptom checklist out 6 months. So long after stopping the intervention, you see fewer problems, very significantly fewer problems with a big effect size. Next slide, please. And on the SDQ, decrease in emotional symptoms. Again, an effect size that you just never see in studies like this. Next slide. And the autism symptomatology score was also very significantly different. Next slide, please. And then for personal social behavior on the ASQ, you can see also a significant difference in the two groups with, again, a good effect size. Next. We also did a study in a very low socioeconomic group in Norwalk, and we were able to show at 3 months follow-up that many more children from the intervention group were connected with their mothers, because everybody always wants to know, well, does it work in stressed circumstances? Yes, the answer is yes, it does. And at CLC, we have mixed. Okay, so what are the results of all this? The group sessions improved mother-child emotional connection and child behavior. This is a new and practical approach for improving mother-child relational health, which after all is the basis for all healthy development. And the teachers reported improved behavior in the FNI children, but not in the children who did not have it. Furthermore, the CLC teachers, 89% wanted to make it part of the program. And this is a great endorsement, because who's more important in judging this than the teachers? And one of the comments was that they could get to more children, give more attention to more children, not just the ones who were throwing chairs. This can make a big difference. Next. Now I want you to try rating this video. This is a mother and child face-to-face. Usually we have the mother and child with the child on the lap, but this is for your viewing ease, where you can see both mother and child's faces at the same time to see if they're mirroring each other and just exactly what's going on. So let's look at this little tiny clip.
No smoking allowed. No, no, no. No, no, no. No, no, no.
Okay, what did you see? Did you see attraction? Did you see positive vocal communication? Well, let's start with attraction. I hope you all think that you saw cozy proximity, mutual gaze, warm touch, and that they were very drawn to each other. I would give this pair a 3. And then what about vocal? They sounded as though they're having a little conversation, back and forth, back and forth. And they sounded equally joyful with each other. Next. Facial. Oh, you have to give them a 3. They mirrored each other. They looked at each other the whole time, gaze was sustained, and they're joyfully engaged in smiling, and their smiles exactly match. And of course, they were reciprocal. So next. They would get a 3 on reciprocity as well, because they were in sync and attuned to each other. And if you were to see more of this video, you would see there was a break and they got right back together. And that's what emotional connection is all about, because our families have lots of breaks in connection. It's part of our strained society. But if mothers and children can learn to reconnect, it won't be such a strain, and they will be a buffer for each other's stress. Next slide. Does this pair need any help? No, they don't. They don't need any help. Now I'll show you a pair that absolutely need help. So I'm going to show you a set of slides. No, I guess I'm just going to show you one picture. You only need one picture. You don't even need 30 seconds to see that this child is avoiding the mother. And this went on for minutes. So what would you give them as a score for attraction? You'd have to say that the baby was avoiding the mother, won't even look at her. And believe me, the mother was trying. And for vocal, the baby did not respond to one thing the mother said. Baby didn't avoid her, so we don't give her a 1, but it's pretty sad. And for facial, baby would not look at the mother. Now, this is shocking and sad. And of course, there was no reciprocity whatsoever. And if you saw the video of this, you'd see a mother trying very hard, a sweet mother trying hard. And this is what we're seeing in new babies from COVID. It used to be that 40% of babies were connected in our Well Baby Nursery. That's low enough, but now it's 20%. So we're very worried. The picture you see here is what we're seeing in the majority of children, no matter what the mother tries to connect. Next. Now, this is a mother from their Norwalk study. We had a randomized control trial. So this mother was in the control group with her boy. Her boy was expelled from nursery school. And it takes a lot of doing to get expelled. She was offered a switch group. So all the people who didn't get the intervention got a chance to have several sessions after that. And she took advantage of it. And I want you to hear, and she wants you to hear, what she thinks about what happened and whether she would recommend this to you.
So I got one last question.
Sure.
And you said, you want to share it. You want to share it with your family. You want to share it with your friends. What is it you would say to them? What do you want them to know about this? If somebody asked you about, what are you doing here? And what is this? And what would you say?
I'd say there's a deeper level of love that you can have with your child. And ultimately, if you give it a try, you will see this greater bond and relationship build and grow, and you'll have a whole new level of respect, and any sort of behaviors that you didn't want to exist will disappear.
So the results from what I've presented and Melissa's story are from in-person sessions. Now we're doing at CLC remote thanks to COVID. And guess what? We're seeing enormous amounts of connection from even one session. So where do we stand? I've been at this for 50 years. First 25 years of clinical practice and running a mothering center, and now 25 years of research from molecules to animals to babies to children. And what do we have? We have a theory of change that autonomic conditioning via emotional exchange leads to emotional connection. We've tested the theory from molecules to animals, as I said. I discovered for the first time the oxytocin receptors in the gut, which I think explains what I was talking about with you before, gut feelings and gut-brain communication. We've got a new assessment tool, the Welch Emotional Connection Screen, named the WEX. Teachers and parent-facing professionals of any kind can just very quickly assess, and you all see parents pick up children. You can see in 1 minute whether they're attracted, what their vocal communication does, what their facial communication does, and whether they're reciprocal, and whether they need help. And then we have a brief touch, which is a practical intervention that we're now showing can be done remotely. It's the emotional exchange, and we have the toolkit to support families doing emotional exchange. Now, by the way, here you see we're talking about mothers. That's always studied. And we need to study fathers too, but we do have one study with a WEX, and we showed that a WEX at 6 months in full-term infants predicted 3-year behavior if the mother filled out the WEX, but if the mother filled out the behavioral assessment, but if the father was coded as emotionally connected or not 4 months, it did not predict outcome. So there's something really important about getting the mother connected. And I can tell you that, of course, we want to get not just the father, but the grandparents and everybody in the family connected. And the video you saw of Melissa happens to be a family that came with 3 generations to our group in a very good way. Grandparent power is really great. So whenever we can, we rope in grandparents and fathers. But we could only do so much in our studies. And since we knew that it was important to get mother and child connected, that's what we concentrated on. But in no way does it leave out the father. Next slide, please. Now, I just wanted to tell you the rest of the story on Ryan, who spent 4 years avoiding his mother from 2012 to 2016. And you saw the changeover at 2016. At 2018, he was just great. And at 2021, he's fabulous. He's a wonderful son. When he gets upset, he goes to his mother. If his mother's upset, he goes to comfort her. A wonderful brother, a wonderful cousin, a very good student and good citizen at school. So that's a pretty good outcome from 2016, when he just wanted to sleep or hang on to pillows, to an outgoing, happy, well-developing child. And this is what can happen in a snap. And it's really so surprising how fast these things can transform with emotional connection. Next slide, please. Now, this is our current nurture science program at Columbia. And all this work that I've talked about for the last decades couldn't be done by just me alone. And I have 2 other people here with me today, Beatrice Pretter and Marianne Austin. And Marianne Austin has been with me for 4 decades. So I'm very grateful for all of you and for all the people whose names aren't on her, who contribute to all our studies to produce this body of evidence that is overwhelmingly important. And I'm very happy to present it to you. And I would like to entertain your questions in a back and forth discussion. And I heard Penny say that you can put things in the chat, but Penny, after we do the chat, can we just have people call out?
Yes, oh, absolutely. People can call out if they want to. If they prefer to put something in the chat, that's fine, and I'll read it.
Yo no hago chat muy bien.
Well, we can start with, I did get some questions ahead of time when people registered. And somebody wanted to know, what about children who have problems at home? They may be okay at school, but at home, they're having some behavioral issues. You know, is this a sign of no emotional connection with their parents?
Most probably it shows that they're not able, the family is not able to sustain emotional connection, because behavioral symptoms are symptoms of lack of co-regulation. And when you get back in co-regulation, you don't see bad behavior. And it's wonderful if children can still behave at school, even though they're having these problems. But of course, a lot of children will show their behavioral problems at school and not at home. So it's very good for teachers to be on the lookout both ways. And also, teachers have a chance to relate to the parents such that they might hear of the behavioral problems at home and point the family towards our tools.
Penny, I have a question.
Mary Baskin?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Martha, I have something I'd like to know. How can we communicate the importance of the emotional connection to our parents?
You can ask questions like, will your child look at you? And if they say no, you can say, I'll bet that makes you feel terrible. And it's very important that you be able to enjoy that with each other. And I have some suggestions for you. But a big sign is no eye contact. Or if you see signs, you can say, I have a suggestion. Or just ask them, how are things going at home? Your child is behaving pretty well at school, but what about home? I'm getting an idea there might be more problem there. Generally, I found that parents are very happy if somebody will bring up the problem that they're having. And if they're not having it, they don't really mind being asked. They just say no. And of course, some people who are having a problem will say no anyway because they're embarrassed. But the school can set an environment of, we're here to make sure that you have all the benefits of the best kind of relationship possible. And the best kind of relationship possible gets rid of all bad behavior. It takes a lot of stress off you. But of course, Mary, you have to believe that to say it.
Absolutely. And we do believe it at CLC.
Also, Dr. Welch, I know, many of us have children, have students that don't have a mother in the picture. So,
yes.
Either their mother, never was with them, or the mother passed away, or the mother is incarcerated, and the child may be with an aunt or an uncle or some other family member.
Yes.
Is that a lost cause? I mean, what?
No.
Say about that?
The beauty of connection is that any two people can forge it. It's just harder. I've done a lot of work with adopted children, very seriously disturbed adopted children. I'll give an example of one. You won't believe this, and I'm sorry to say it's true. This one child adopted by a Parisian pair of wonderful parents was in an orphanage in Russia where it was all babies up to a certain age, and they would put bottles in the crib, and the staff would go home on Friday night and not come back till Monday morning. Can you believe it? So this child couldn't speak outside the home. And luckily, this was a pair of parents who had their own business. So the child was able to stay with them at all times. And then they came to New York and we worked on it, and the child was able to behave normally outside the home. But that was an adoption. If it's an aunt or an uncle or somebody else, the thing is they have to accept full parenthood for the child. And they're more apt to do that if they feel connected. It's just a bigger hump to get over generally. But no, I've worked with so many different combinations. It's just, you have to face the difficulties and overcome them. And it's true for a mother too. I mean, a natural mother, she may have been separated. We have a lot of families where the child was left in another country while the parents came here, and then they bring the child, and the child hardly knows the parents, and they have to start over. You know, just every kind of situation you can imagine. But the thing is, it can be overcome if you try to emotionally connect. And that involves helping the family to do the emotional exchange, and also helping them to understand that the bad behavior is not purposeful. Oftentimes looks so purposeful, but it's really dysregulation. Children do not self-regulate for very long. If they're not co-regulating, they become dysregulated. And that's why school is so difficult these days, and why 50% aren't ready for kindergarten. They can't co-regulate and they can't self-regulate. So what can they do but be dysregulated? And teachers are expected to regulate a whole class. Well, it used to be possible when you had one child who was dysregulated or two, but you can't regulate a classroom full of dysregulated children all by yourself. I met a wonderful teacher from Florida who told me that she had a very challenged community she was teaching. And she had 30 first graders. Every single child was on Ritalin. 30 kids on Ritalin. Okay. So the idea is to take whatever parent it is, whatever substitute parent, even foster parent, if they get connected, they're very likely to keep the child. The trouble is the foster children so often come with outrageous behavior and nobody helps them overcome it, so they don't get connected and they get passed on. I had one girl who was passed on 6 times by the time she was 12. Wow. Yeah, and she was adopted by a couple who really wanted a baby, but the social worker talked her into taking this beautiful girl who looked just like the mother. So she said, okay. And the child wouldn't go near the mother. She would talk to the father, but she stayed in her room, wouldn't go near the mother. So we had a session. And the father was getting madder and madder at the girl's rejection of this very lovely mother. And he just blew his stack and said, why won't you call her mom? And she said, she's so much better than a mother. Well, what do you think that did to the adoptive mother? They glommed onto each other just like that, and that was the end of the problem.
Dr. Welch, I have 2 questions that are kind of related. One was through the email, the other one is in the chat. What we're finding now, this year especially, is children, there seem to be an extraordinary number of children with behavior issues that we think stem from the pandemic, and
yes.
You know, coming to school, that they haven't had socialization before. We don't know what kind of situation they were in at home, with parents that are, you know, trying to work or
yes.
trying to help their older children with their schoolwork online, that type of thing. And so we would like to know, what can teachers do to support the emotional connection and help these children that they're really suffering with
Yeah, they really are. Hopefully most classrooms have 2 teachers, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, if it's really a severe problem, I would say take turns having a dysregulated child sit as close to the teacher as is feasible. Take turns with the dysregulated child sitting next to physically close to each teacher. So how many kids in a class?
In Connecticut, in a preschool classroom, there's a cap at 20 children for 2 teachers.
Okay, so it'll be 10 teachers. So you could do 10, each 10 a week, right? 1 morning, 1 afternoon, and cover 20 children with close proximity. And close proximity is a great connector. You get into physiologic sync when you're physically close. And in fact, listen to this interesting story that supported my early ideas. If a goat loses its baby and you give it another baby, it will butt it to death. But if you tie it together for 4 days so it can't butt, it will get connected and raise it as its own. I thought that was really interesting and telling. Similarly, if you cross-foster rats from low nurture mothers to high nurture mothers, in 4 days, it will change their stress system in their brain. 4 days, same 4 days as the goat. Very interesting, right? Now, Marianne and I used to do these intensive sessions with adoptive children who were going to be sent away from their families because they couldn't manage. And we're able to make that change in 2 days with about 16 hours of connecting, which is probably the same as 4 days, right? So it's possible, and it should be aimed for. And when you see mothers and children, or adoptive mothers, or substitute mothers, or foster parents, or fathers who are raising children that aren't connecting, then you know that they're going to need some help connecting. And it doesn't take much. All it takes is an emotional exchange. And you could give them an assignment to sit down with the child on their lap every single day and tell them emotional things, and you'll see an immediate change. I had one mother who complained that once she did it, the child wanted to do it every day before school. And she was so annoyed. I said, oh my gosh, do you know how wonderful that is if your child's asking to connect, to get ready to go to school? I had another mother whose child was stuttering. So I told her, do this. So I said, well, what happened? She said, well, it improved the stuttering, but then I didn't do it anymore. I said, why not? Because the twin wanted to do it also. So that was too much for her, so she quit. Which tells you sometimes how stressed people might be that they can't manage something that they found curative, you know? And we do have to recognize how stressed mothers are, especially during the pandemic. But what they need to understand is if they will connect, it's a relief to them and a protection against all the stress. It goes 2 ways. If it doesn't benefit both, it isn't happening. And that's the beauty of it. We have a very nice video from CLC of a mother who was having a terrible time. And she hung in there. The child was crying and saying he didn't want to be near her. And then he melted into her. And she turns to the camera of the Zoom and says, thank you.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think this is a great place. I want to thank Dr. Welch and her team for agreeing to come and talk to us tonight about emotional connection. We appreciate your wisdom and your insight and we thank you so much. I also want to thank Emily, our translator,
Yes, thank you, Emily.
who I believe has done a wonderful job. I see something in the chat that says she's done a wonderful job. So thank you. I have 2 poll questions that I'm going to put up. Hang in there, don't hang up yet, everybody, because we do have a raffle for books. So I'm only going to keep you another couple minutes. If you could, I'm going to launch my poll. If you could answer, okay, it's just 2 questions. So if you could answer the poll, I would really appreciate it. This is, we're not sharing this. This is just for our information to help us to provide something better when we're doing these series. And then I also have, hold on, I'm copying it. I also have a survey, a 1-minute survey that I'm going to put into the chat. I put the link into the chat. If you could fill out this survey for us, it will take 1 minute of your time. And we would really, really appreciate it because this is how we determine what our next session is going to be about. We want to present ideas and topics that are important to you, that are going to help you in your work. So we really do use these surveys to help us to determine that. And so I really appreciate your participation. The other thing we have left is the raffle. So I have everybody's names in here that registered. I'm going to pull a name, and that person will receive a copy of the book, Each and Every Child, Teaching Preschool with an Equity Lens by Susan Friedman and Alyssa Wenalupi. I'm going to pick out my first name. Just want to make sure I'm not looking. My first name is Wanda Cherry. Is Wanda Cherry here? You have to be in it to win it. Do we have a Wanda? Please speak up if Wanda is here. Okay, no Wanda, so we're going to go on to the next one. Giselle Amaro. Giselle Amaro.
Yes, she's here.
Are you there, Giselle? Giselle? I hope you're there. So I will email. Oh, I see she's typing in. So she's happy. So you want a book, and I will email you with information on where you can pick that up. I think it's going to be the library, but with the Stanford Ferguson Library, but we will contact you and let you know. We have one more book to give away. And this is Lenore Fogel. Lenore, are you here? Oh, yeah. Lenore. Hi, Lenore. Okay, Lenore, you have also won a copy of Each and Every Child, Teaching Preschool with an Equity Lens. Lenore, we will contact you to let you know where you can pick up your book. And so I think we're going to wrap things up. I'm going to end the poll. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody,
for attending tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. We will be bringing you more professional development as soon as we can. Everybody stay safe, stay well, and thank you for attending.
Thank you very much. It was excellent.
Stop.